Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith. It's one child abuse survivor to another restoration, and I'm glad to be here. It's Monday morning, 7 o'clock here in the morning, November the 14th, 2016, and it's been a little while since I've done a show. I had to put them off. Actually, I took a break, and for several reasons, actually. And but I miss doing the shows. I'm glad to be back, and hopefully this is something helpful that you'll get something out of if you're a survivor of child abuse. And I know these shows help me just to keep me focused and staying on my healing journey, right? Sort of focus in on a few things that I need to work on. So hopefully they'll be helpful for you too. And it's been a busy couple of months actually. I took about a month and a half off, almost 2 months off from doing any shows actually, or any of my other biblical counseling studies or other studies that I do, working on a bachelor of ministry. But you can go back and listen to that one show that I did, which was a Canadian Thanksgiving update, which is where I talked about what was happening. My dad passed away, and also my husband's been very sick lately. He's terminally ill, diagnosed almost 16 years ago with 2 to 5 years to live. He's still here by the grace of God, and he's just struggling, and he's always struggling. But the last few weeks he's really been struggling, and so it's been the whole thing has been kind of hard to deal with, and I've been just trying to take it easy, take a break. I haven't had any vacation time for a couple of years. I've been working steady right through for 2 years now, and with no real breaks in between, just weekends and stuff like that, one day off here and there. And so I just found myself getting really tired, so I took a break, but I'm glad to be back. And we'll get started right into this here, where we left off. If you want to pick up the show that we left off before we left off, you can grab the one right before the Canadian Thanksgiving update, and that'll give you what we were looking at. Because I was mark my place where I'm at, sort of thing, so that I know where I'm at with the material that I'm looking at. So, a morning reflection. How are we doing on our healing journey? We can ask ourselves this question. Any particular thing that I need to work on? How am I feeling? Sort of thing. How am I doing? That's always good to do. Sort of take a check and see where we're at in our healing journey. And a safety checklist. We need to do that as well. If you're a survivor of abuse, you need to make sure that you're safe enough to listen to this show, or anything like this, actually. So you got to do a safety checklist to make sure that you're safe enough that you won't hurt yourself or hurt somebody else because the information might trigger you and then cause you to spiral downward in your healing journey. You don't want that. Get the information on how to stay safe. You can grab that from an ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse Survivor to Thriver manual, and that is really helpful. It's like 60-something pages long, and it's a large read. It's a long read, but it's worth it if you're a survivor of abuse to make sure that you are safe enough to be listening to anything like this. If you're not sure, you probably should just turn this show off and then go get that information and learn how to be safe, so that when you are listening to this type of material or anything like this, that you won't be triggered by somebody else's story or by information like this, right? So we'll get right into this. This is from Havoca. That's Help for Adult Victims of Child Abuse, Havoca, HAVOCA.org. And this is Adult Survivors of Sexual Abuse. It's an acronym that Cheryl had written up, this lady Cheryl, from the website there. I just think it's interesting and really cool to look at. She spelled out she has a little blurb written up for each letter of the Adult Survivors of Sexual Abuse. But like she said, this would be good for anybody who's been abused. Doesn't have to be child sexual abuse or sexual abuse. And so we're on the letter F in of. So F, focus on making better choices, she says. Whether you choose to enrich your lives with those choices is ultimately your decision. Only you can change your life. Only you have the power to do that. And if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. That's awesome. I think that's true. I realized that a long time ago, actually, even before I started my healing journey, that I needed to make better choices. And I did make better choices through the years. Slowly, tried to make better choices for my life. As a survivor of abuse, I never really reached out and got any help until after I was 42. But I think that was a really good choice finally to reach out and get some help. And that's probably one of my best choices. But I've made, tried tried to make good choices for myself as a survivor of abuse. It was difficult, because I didn't really have the information, and I was coming from a place of bitterness and, um, you know, feeling all kinds of emotional difficulties. I wouldn't even say so much mental illness. It was mostly emotional problems. I'd never dealt with the abuse, never dealt with my own decisions that I had made that were really bad choices for myself because of the abuse. And even as an adult, an older adult, was still doing a lot of things like self-sabotaging and just lots of things that I didn't realize I was doing until somebody pointed them out to me. And so it was I like what she has to say here. Only you can change your life. Only you have the power to do that. So if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. I like that. We have, ultimately it's up to us. It was up to me at the age of 42 after I hit rock bottom there to decide whether or not I should reach out and get some help. And I'm glad that I made the right choice and I did that. Thankfully, because I was struggling on my own. I was very much struggling on my own with this abuse in my past, and I knew that I couldn't keep going like that. So I'm really glad that I made the right decision to get help. And that's that's going on now since I started my healing journey really in 2007, but I did the bulk of it after that, like in 2009, 2010. And so it's been almost 16, almost 17 years, almost 7 years now, not 17, 7 years. It's from 2009, let's say, or even 2010. So, that's 7 years of working on making better choices and on taking care of myself and on getting the help that I need instead of 7 years of just continuing on in this misery that I was in. So I did make the right decision there. Really, only we have the power to do that. That's very true. It was up to me to reach out. Nobody was going to reach out to me first. A lot of people didn't realize that I was struggling in the first place with these problems and issues. Most people didn't even know that I had this stuff going on in my life. They wouldn't have known. There was only a couple people that kind of knew that I was struggling. That's just because I was close enough to them that I felt I could kind of talk to them about stuff. But the majority of people in my life had no idea that I was struggling and that I was having these kinds of difficulties. So it was up to me to reach out and get some help and, to change my life, right? And that is so true. So I really like what she has to say here. And then I like, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. And that's the truth, because that's what I keep doing every day. Every day that I get up, I just try and I try again. And I make mistakes, and then I have to learn from those mistakes. And like we all do. Most people, nobody gets it right all the time, right? And sometimes we make these choices and do these things that, we think at the time we know what we're doing, and later find out like, oh boy, that was a bad choice. Or that was a bad decision. That was a bad way of handling that. But see, if we learn from it, then it wasn't a wasted time at all. It was a learning experience. So I like to kind of chalk things up to that. A lot of times it's just the issue that I'm still dealing with adult survivor issues that have not been, dealt with and addressed. They need to work on. And so some decisions that I make, not a lot, but I'd say some of the decisions I make, get me sort of, it's not like they get me in trouble, but they're not handled correctly, because of my adult survivor issues. And so that's where I learn, because, if something doesn't go wrong, then I don't know that I've got an issue with it. So it's like the mistakes, as long as we learn from them and we try to do a better job the next time around and actually learn what that trigger is or learn what that issue is, and then try to learn how to not do that again, then we're making progress, right? And then we can measure that progress, right, actually. So I like what she has to say there. So we'll move on. I think that's great. So this is from HAVOCA. That's HAVOCA.org. First Step, Adult Survivors of Sexual Abuse. It's just a little acronym that she's got there. Now, next we were looking at help for, this is still from HAVOCA, help for adult victims of child abuse. We were looking at a inner child section. This is, if you go to their website, havoca.org, you can find there on the information for survivors tab. Under that, you can find the inner child tab, and there's a lot of information there for the inner child tab. And this particular section is called Feeling the Feelings. And we left off at this one section We left off at number 2. As long as we have pockets of pressurized emotional energy that we have to avoid dealing with, those emotional wounds will run our lives. We use food, cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, work, religion, exercise, meditation, television, etc. to help us keep suppressing that energy and to help us keep ourselves focused on something else, anything else besides the emotional wounds that terrify us. And the emotional wounds are what cause obsession and compulsion, are what the critical parent voice works so hard to keep us from dealing with. So that would be on the last show that we did. We talked about that. The next one is number 3. Our emotions tell us who we are. So they say here, our soul communicates with us through emotional energy vibrations. Truth is an emotional energy vibrational communication from our soul on the spiritual plane to our being, spirit, soul on this physical plane. It is something that we feel in our heart, our gut, something that resonates within us. Our problem has been that because of our unhealed childhood wounds, it has been very difficult to tell the difference between an intuitive emotional truth and the emotional truth that comes from our childhood wounds. So when one of our buttons is pushed and we react out of the insecure, scared little kid inside of us, or the angry, rage-filled kid, or the powerless, helpless kid, etc., then we are reacting to what our emotional truth was when we were 5 or 9 or 14, not to what is happening now. So since we have been doing that all of our lives, we learned not to trust our emotional reactions and got the message not to trust them in a variety of ways when we were kids. It's quite interesting, and I think that makes really good sense to me. It does ring true to me. I think that she's right there. Our emotions, dealing with these emotional, if we've suffered emotional trauma, being abused as children, I know that I'm still reacting. A lot of my reactions are in this physical world today that I'm dealing with right now in my life, are coming from my inner children, my inner self, from these wounded points when I was young. So I'm reacting from an 8-year-old's. My wounded 8-year-old is reacting, basically, is what's happening. My 10-year-old wounded, angry, rage-filled inner child is reacting to a lot of things. And I'm the adult in this situation. I'm the adult now. And these inner wounded parts of myself should not be running my life. And that's the big problem. And this is actually one of my biggest problems. And this is where I have some of I'd say most of my trouble in dealing with life, dealing with situations, dealing with anything, is coming from right here, from what they're talking about here. And I realize that, and I'm actually trying to work with it. Because, a lot of my decisions that I make are based on my wounded inner self, which I call my inner children, which is just a way of looking at it. These points where I was wounded, and something inside me says, no, we can't trust. No, we don't trust that person. No, I don't want to do that because that's going to put me in harm's way. That's going to be too much for me to deal with or whatever. So it shuts me down. I allow that to shut me down. And that's just my woundedness from my past. That scared little girl inside of me making these decisions, or the angry girl inside of me making the decisions. And I really need to get a hold of that because I'm the adult in the situation now. And it's, I'm the one that needs to make those decisions, not my inner wounded parts of myself. Even though I need to listen to them and I need to understand where that's coming from, that's where I need to heal. And that does show me right there where I need to heal when I run into something like that. And I do it all the time. I run into this stuff all the time. It does not necessarily on a daily basis. I would say, annually at some point, something will happen that will trigger this wounded inner part of myself and cause some difficulties for me. I make really rash decisions, not necessarily unhealthy choices, but I make terrible decisions on things because I'm just allowing my wounded inner self to make these decisions instead of the adult person in me that needs to make these decisions for myself, not this wounded child that I was. So this is really, really information that I think is helpful for a lot of people. And I would say if you haven't gone to that website, it's worth taking a look at. Help for Adult Victims of Child Abuse, Havoca, HAVOCA.org. And then this particular information, like I said, is the information for survivors. It's under that tab. So you just look on that survivors information for survivor tab. And there's a bunch of columns under that. Once you click on that tab, it brings you to all the information that we're really looking at. And one of the tabs is Inner Child. So that's where we're at right here. If you want to read through that, that is some really interesting information. Very helpful. And I think what she's saying here is really quite good. It's sort of similar to along the lines of like, for instance, Robert Berney's work. That's the Dance of Wounded Souls. Really, really interesting stuff. And it looks at codependency and emotional wounding and lots of information like that, as well as John Bradshaw. And John Bradshaw's work was very helpful for me, and I did in Robert Berney as well. I'd say just as equally. So I did the work in three books: Healing the Shame That Binds You, and then Healing the Wounded Inner Child, or Loving the Wounded Inner Child Within, or whatever that book was. I did the work in those books. This was years ago, actually, 2010, 2011. And then Robert Berney's book as well. Robert Berney has some great information. And his is like Joy to You and Me, or Joy to Me and You, something like that. Robert Berney, Burney. He's got some great information about this kind of stuff. So this is all sort of very similar to what they were talking about, those two gentlemen. And so it does, it rings true that it seems to be a huge issue. But just looking at it, I know exactly that's what's going on with me a lot of times. So our problem has been that because of our unhealed childhood wounds, it's been very difficult to tell the difference between an intuitive emotional truth and the emotional truth that comes from our childhood wounds. So then we don't learn. We don't trust our emotions, and we don't trust our emotional reactions and whatnot. And then, therefore, we're not sure. We're kind of confused, and we're not really able to deal with things properly. So yeah, it's important to get a hold of this type of stuff. And if you're struggling and you keep not making any progress and whatnot, get some help. I never went the traditional therapist way because I didn't want anybody messing with my head. I had issues with that, trust issues. So I just decided that I would just do self-help. And I actually did work with a couple of therapists out of Australia one of them happens to be my friend, which was very nice of her to do. So I did work with a couple of therapists for a brief time. But most of my work I've done through self-help. But if I really felt that I couldn't make any progress, I'd probably reach out to some type of counselor or therapist. At this stage of my life, because I realize that not everybody's out to get me, not everybody's out to hurt me, and not everybody's out to abuse me, And so as an adult person who's getting well into my adult life, heading towards the end of it, getting closer by the day, I'm making some progress in this, but it's slow. It's very slow for me. It doesn't happen very quickly. And I think it's because life gets in the way, right? I don't have time to focus on a lot of stuff for very long, because I have to work. My husband's terminally ill, and just like everybody else, we're busy. I don't have children or anything like that, but I'm still a very busy person. So it's like, it's hard to make the time to deal with this stuff. But this is all very interesting, and I figured what we'll do is we'll move on from there. But we'll pick up the next part of it next Monday. But what I'm going to do, instead of doing a daily show, which I love to do, rather do the daily shows actually, but it's too much for me. I really can't do the daily shows, unfortunately. I love to do that. It's too bad. I used to do that years ago. Is do a weekly show, and that way I can actually commit to it and show up here instead of putting them on, getting to the point where I can't do them and putting them off. So I'll just say Mondays, same time, same place, 7 o'clock in the morning. I can do a show a week, and that's not going to be a problem. A show every day was just too much, and unfortunately, I really like to do that, but I work full time, and I'm extremely busy. I start working at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I don't finish work until almost 9 o'clock at night, because I got a split shift, and it's a long day. Not only that, but my husband's terminally ill, and he can't cook for himself, can't do anything for himself, so I have to do just about everything for him. So it's a lot of work taking care of him, and trying to take care of myself, and trying to take care of my things in my life, right? And so I just can't do the daily show right now anymore for a while. Maybe at some point we can pick them up, but once a week, that's what I'll do. So Monday mornings we'll just do this show, same time, same place, 7 o'clock in the morning, Mountain Standard Time, and we'll continue on like that. I'm going to do a few videos at night that are from UStream, which are my biblical study videos. Which one of them is a healing journey type, looking at the Bible, right? And biblical counseling, and then the other ones are just Bible studies. So if you're interested in joining me there, you can find that information on my website, Born in Hell. I got all my information there on the Born in Hell website now. Just type in your browser, Laurie Smith, Born in Hell, or you can just type in Born in Hell Weebly. It'll probably come up. And under the About tab is where all my links are. And I have a Ustream channel that I'll be doing these videos from. But you can also find them on my YouTube channel and on the actual channels they belong to. So on Weebly. So there's just my information's kind of everywhere. But Born in Hell website, that's probably the best place to grab this stuff because I'll have it. It's all the web addresses are there. So next we'll move on to positive reinforcement. What am I doing right in my daily walk? Looking at positives and progress instead of just negatives all the time, like, oh, I should be doing this, or I didn't get this done or that done. That's so easy to do because that's true. We quite often don't get to do what we need to do, and then we just become down about it, and then we don't do anything. That's what my biggest problem is. It's like, okay, I just give up. I can't get it done, so it's not going to happen, so forget it. And then I just become kind of like, don't even work on things, right? So I thought, let's just look at some positives. What am I doing right in my daily walk? Well, I got up this morning, and I'm going to face the week, ahead. And it's a new day, it's a new challenge, and I'm just going to do the best I can today, right? And that I can say is a positive because, it takes strength and it takes courage to keep walking forward, and it takes tenacity to keep going. And, that's something that we can be happy about and be thankful for, that we have the strength to do that. And so, instead of just looking at the negatives all the time, here's a positive sort of affirmation that I found off this one website. And what was this website called? This website was called, and this is the only thing they had on that website, heartswithsoul.com. There's nothing else on that website. Just but that's okay. It's really cool to look at. And the next one up is I feel surrounded by love. I think that's awesome. I feel surrounded by love. I could say that all day. But if I don't feel surrounded by love, it won't make much sense. I feel surrounded by love. I do feel surrounded by love, actually, and it doesn't come from people. It comes from my Maker, my Creator. I do feel surrounded by love, and my husband loves me. And there's a few of my friends that love me, which is nice, that I know of. But that's so superficial, that type of love. I'm learning to love myself. I've learned to love myself, actually, and which is great because I used to hate myself. I used to have a lot of self-loathing going on and self-hatred. So I've learned to love myself, so that surrounds me with love right there. And then I know that my Maker, my Creator, loves me. That's my God, right? And my higher power, right? I believe in God, so the God of the Bible. But I don't really push my Christianity and my ideas about Christianity on this show. But that's why I do the Bible stuff separate. But I feel surrounded by love. I absolutely do, by my Creator and Maker. And that's very important because I didn't have that before. And after May 22nd, 2007, I realized that, yes, my parents didn't love me, and I'm not the only child that wasn't loved by their parents. Just one more. And my family, whether they love me or not really doesn't matter because they weren't there for me. So my biological family, right? But I've always had friends that love me, and some of my friends' parents actually said they love me, which was really sweet. Thank God for those people when I was growing up. And then later I thought, I'm not really lovable, but I had to learn how to love myself, And then I realized that my Maker, my Creator loves me. So yeah, I feel surrounded by love. That's awesome, and I could remember that through the day, right? Self-care, what are we doing to physically, spiritually, emotionally care for ourselves? What can we work on to help ourselves, right? That's very important, and I'm working on self-care. I'm still working on that. And, I figure as long as I keep focused on it, at some point I'll get a few things done. Just eating right, getting enough sleep, taking care of ourselves, getting exercise when we need to, getting out and just breathing, getting some fresh air. So a friend of mine told me, she says, you just need to go sit at a park somewhere, and breathe, sit in the grass and just breathe, or go for a walk along the river or whatever. Get some sunshine. These are things that I forget to do. I'm so busy most of the time. Now it's going to be winter, so it's going to be way too cold to be going outside. But I can still do self-care stuff in the wintertime too, right? So these things are really important. Personal Bill of Rights. We only have a few minutes left here. Personal Bill of Rights. This was from Charles H. Whitfield. This is the very last one, number 38. Charles H. Whitfield, MD, Healing the Child Within, number 38. I have the challenge to extend to you the same rights that I claim for myself. That's true. I have the challenge to extend to you the same rights that I claim for myself. That's right, because I deserve the same rights that I would, and you do, the same rights I would claim for myself, you deserve. And the same rights you would claim I deserve, right? I like that. I like this Charles H. Whitfield. You can find it just about anywhere if you type in Personal Bill of Rights, Charles H. Whitfield, or just type in Whitfield Personal Bill of Rights. It'll come up. It's everywhere. It's all over the place. Interesting, 38 of those Personal Bill of Rights, and they were really, really cool. So that's just about all we have time for here this morning. Creating cognitive boundaries. This is helpful for people that need to create boundaries. And these are cognitive boundaries, right? So we could visualize ourselves as strong and empowered, right? We could trust our gut feeling and inner voice. That's very important to trust your gut feeling, actually. I do, and it works every time. Trust your gut feeling and inner voice. Practice saying no assertively, but not aggressively, right? So we could practice saying no assertively, but not aggressively. So we don't have to be mean about it. When we say no, we can just be assertive and say, no, I'm sorry. I can't do that. Or just, no, I won't be able to do that. We don't have to be sorry, right? That's really, really good, actually. And we'll pick up from here next Monday. So I wish you a really good week ahead. I wish I could do the daily shows. Like I said, I'm sorry that I don't have time to do the daily shows. But through the week, right, we need to take care of ourselves, right? We need to do the right things on our own behalf. We need to, if we're struggling, we need to reach out and get some help, And if we're not coping right or coping properly or coping well, then we need to reach out and get some help. So, through the week, if you're struggling and you're having a hard time, you need to reach out and if you can't find somebody around you to call, to talk to, because I know so many times that's the case. There's nobody really in my life seriously that I could call. I have a couple people, I guess, that I could call, but they don't live anywhere near me. Live like on the other side of the planet, and it's like, if you don't have anybody around that can be there for you, then you need to call a crisis line. Call somebody, but you make sure that you get some help, because we deserve to have a good life just like everybody else. We did not deserve to be abused. Who does? Nobody. There isn't anybody that deserves to be abused. I'm sorry. It's not okay, right? So, we didn't deserve what happened to us. But and in saying that, and the reason I do keep saying that on all my shows, really, is because we deserve help. We deserve to have a good life just like everybody else, But it is ultimately up to us. Nobody's going to do it for us. I was waiting for somebody to come knocking on the door and just produce this good life for me. And I didn't know how to do the work, And then after I started my healing journey, I realized, wow, it's going to have to be me to do it. I'm going to have to do it. And there's nobody else that could do this for me. I have to do it myself. And it's painful and it's hard, but, don't do it alone if you don't feel like you can do this stuff alone, like they always say. That's why you got to do that safety checklist. And but I would say, through the week, if you're having trouble and you're struggling, you reach out and you make a phone call. You do not struggle on your own, and you make sure that you get help. Because you certainly do deserve it, and I know I did, and I know that I do, right? And I know that going forward, I will do that. If I'm struggling and I can't cope, I get so low to the point where I was before I started my healing journey, I'll be calling a crisis line. I'll be doing the right thing, because I am not going to be destroyed by my past. I'm not going to be destroyed by abuse. I'm not going to be destroyed by somebody, or people who in my past. Nope. I'm going to win. I win this fight. I win this battle. And I am the victor in this because I stay alive and I treat myself really good and I love myself and I've learned to love others. I care about myself and I've learned to care about others. I'm learning to care and to take care of myself. So this is what we all This is what we all deserve, but we have to do the work, right? So if you can't do it on your own, make sure you get some help. And have a wonderful week, everybody, and we'll talk to you next Monday, same time, same place. Take good care. Bye-bye.